Lab Guy here. Continuing with building the board, it's time to wire the plus and minus 5 volts to the max 4395. So I start by adding 10 microfarad capacitors to the power pins on the 4395. Next, I'm going to ground the ground pins of the 5-volt regulators directly to the ground plane on top of the board. For the positive regulator 7805, it's pin 2, or the middle pin, which I'm soldering right now. For the negative 5-volt regulator, the 7905, pin 1 is ground. I will now solder both of those grounds down. Next, I'm going to put the 10 microfarad capacitors on the 7805 regulator, one on the input, which is pin 1, and a second one on the output, which is pin 3. Both of these are also soldered to ground. Using an orange jumper wire, I connect plus 15 volts to pin 1 of the 7805 positive 5-volt regulator. Using a red wire, I connect pin 3 of the 7805, the 5-volt output pin, to pin 4 of the max 4395 op-amp. It's time to add the two 10 microfarad bypass capacitors to pins 2 and 3 of the negative 5-volt regulator and LM7905. These are installed the same as on the positive regulator, one on the input power pin and one on the output power pin, and the far end of both capacitors is grounded. Using a blue wire, I connect pin 2 of the 7905, the input pin, to minus 15 volts. The wiring color code for this project is orange for plus 15 volts, blue for minus 15 volts, red for plus 5 volts, green for minus 5 volts, yellow for general signal path wiring, and should I require it, I would use black wires for ground connections. Using a green wire, I attach pin 3 of the 7905, the minus 5-volt output, to pin 11 of the max 4395 op-amp. And there you go. Plus and minus 5 volts hooked to the max 4395, and the two regulators hooked to plus and minus 15 volts. I finally figured out that I don't have enough contacts on this terminal strip, so I have to remove this one and replace it with a better one.
Oh, ain't that...
Now there's enough high current contacts on the terminal strip. A simple mistake, we all make them. I'm now going to make 4 openings in the Kapton tape right next to the power op amps. In those openings, I'll place a loop of wire that's pressed flat to the ground plane and solder it on top of the board in the 4 places. On the bottom, I will wrap the ends around and solder them there, forming a convenient set of ground points beneath the board for the next phase of wiring these op amps.
Oh, look at that. Piece of cake.
And this is the last of the 4 grounds. These 4 points will be where the bypass capacitors for the power lines going to the op amps will attach underneath the board. All I have to do now is tin all 4 of the ground connections on the bottom, and we're ready to proceed with power wiring for the power op amps. In part 6, we'll be installing the 10 microfarad bypass capacitors and the 0.1 microfarad bypass capacitors at the power pins of the power op amps.